Welcome to Causing the Effect, a podcast focused on the exploration of your mind, body, and spirit.
My man, Shiva Das, what's up, baby? How you feeling?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to talk to you. Everybody, we are here with, we'll umbrella him as a creator, Shiva Das, but musician, coach, artist, yoga instructor, everything. Shiva, I'm going to throw it at you because I know we're going to be talking a lot about yoga. Where did the journey start, particularly on this yoga? Because I'm sure you spent some time in the material world. Like, when did you start getting the inkling for the spiritual side?
Yeah, really, I think the first instance of seeing something different, seeing something wilder was when my family took a trip out west and we went to Sedona. We went to places in New Mexico, Arizona. And this was kind of my first dive into like this world of like crystals and dream catchers and yin yangs and things like that. Hadn't really been exposed to any of that growing up in Cleveland. But at the same time, like I always found myself being kind of more spiritual person. I always went to church with my mom, like a good a Catholic boy, right? So then when I went out west, it was like, oh wow, there's a whole nother world out here, and it was an introduction to Buddhism, Hinduism, things of this nature.
Beautiful. Yeah. So you're from Ohio.
Yeah, grew up in Cleveland.
So how was it dealing with, because I'm a kid from Brooklyn, and you kind of end up being creative from your society in a way. How was it when you started getting this feeling? Because I'm sure it was always there, and then it kind of exploded when you got to the West. How was that? Did people figure you were like a spiritual guy or that, or did this kind of flow out of you once you got to the West?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I was always the artistic kid. So like, no offense to East Coasters, to Clevelanders, there's a certain lifestyle for men that's expected, which is sports, beer, things like this, golf. And I was good at some of the sports. I was fun at it, but like, I didn't want it to like consume my life. So it's kind of when I started looking for other things and getting interested in other things. In particular though, art was always the thing through childhood, that one thing I was good at, and through probably the one thing through high school that kept my GPA halfway decent was being good at art. So, from my earliest memories, I was always phenomenal at art, kind of, and then the artist kind of brings in the ephemeral into the real. So I was always really connected as a kid, always really encouraged by my parents to pursue art, and it just kind of kept unrolling from there.
Beautiful, man. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I'll tell you, Matt. Shiva, I'm sorry. I went old school to the art side.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
What happened was I've been watching football my entire life. I played it in high school, and like, this is the first year I'm just not watching it. I couldn't believe I spent 10 hours every Sunday looking at the screen. Now I'm like, what the hell was I doing? Now my Sundays are fantastic. So I'm like, I think I just pushed all this stuff aside. And even now art has become more prevalent in my life. I'm just like having nice pieces. I got this little dualistic piece somewhere over here in my back. But because when I would go on a school trip and I would see art and I'd be like, oh, this is not nonsense. And now I take a girl, you go, whatever. And now I'm like, I'm looking at the transcendence of the soul in a way. And I'm starting to see it. I'm just peeking. I'm not there yet. But what does it mean to you? And how would you describe like what that art is? I know you just use that word ephemeral. That seems close, but how would you describe it?
Okay, I want to get into that question, but you actually brought up something before that, which was, talking about football and transitioning to having more time. And I want to preface that with like, I enjoy sport. I love competition. I'm a very competitive person. I'm kind of naturally gifted at a lot of different athletic things, but I never found that thing that I was like super amazing at, right? So I was always like the decent pick on the team, right in the middle, fast, things like that. So like, I don't want to downplay the importance of athletics and keeping your body healthy, because that's actually a very important aspect of yoga. Sure. But at the same time, we want to always make sure we're not obsessing over things. And I think maybe American culture has leaned a little towards obsessing with it, and a lot of men in America don't know what else to do.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So with that, you gave yourself an example. The same thing happened to me. Once I realized I didn't need to obsess over football every weekend. And then also what I realized is it was controlling my emotions. It was controlling my moves. When my team loses, I lose a day because I'm so emotionally invested, right? So if we kind of take a step back, we could maybe even consider that this is a control mechanism to keep us in a state of consumption, to keep us in a state of consuming and mood fluctuation, right? So when we start to dial that back, realize first I get a bunch of time back. And then second, you maybe even start to realize that your emotions are being, maybe manipulated on some level. So we can begin to start taking our emotional body back. And I think this is really important for men to realize.
Dude, that is a great point. Cause it's like around my cousins, there's, we're more into, we have the sci-fi cousins and the sports cousins, and we just call each other the dorks. I'm wearing the Dungeons and Dragons shirt. And now it's like, you go to the sports cousins and it's like, we were just talking about the Giants or the Jets, and you being from Cleveland, Jesus Christ, I just feel bad for you and your soul. It's just a mess. But like, I'm not, I played my first 2 years college football. I still like it. It's just like, like the game last night, the Chargers and the Chiefs, everybody's upset. I'm like, I'll turn it on fourth quarter. I'm like, that was a good game. Like, it's exactly how you're saying. Cause I think when you start getting more into this not another reality, just kind of layering yourself, it's just like you see, not that what's more important. Cause let everything, whatever is the meaning you give it. Right. But like, it's just, I could just go read a book for an hour or 2 hours. Like, it's just being more, not exactly like the word you said. And it's so funny you brought this up, because I was just talking to my cousin about this other, now you add gambling to it. That's legalized. And also, and it's like, Jesus Christ, like how much more kind of control do you want people to be? You're talking about football enough. Now you got betting on it. Your money's involved. It just seems that the more the technology speeds up, the more we need these softer practices, whether you want psychology or spirituality, you need them to kind of balance each other out. Because everybody's I feel like everybody's walking unconscious and not realizing that that's the case. Yeah.
And essentially what we want to try to do is walk the middle way. With a lot of this, and this is kind of where this Eastern thinking comes in, and it's not to say sports are bad, gambling's bad. Like, gambling can be fun, gambling can be, you have to gamble a little bit in life to pursue things you want to do, to take risks, right? So everything's good in moderation. What studying these Eastern philosophies has taught me is just bringing all that into balance and not going too heavy in one way or the other, and staying on the line, and that's different from everyone, for everyone. And I want to bring up a concept too that this was talked about during the Renaissance, which was like the Vitruvian man. The Vitruvian man is a whole 360 man. And this is actually why I started practicing all 8 limbs of yoga so deeply, is because it balances the whole entire body. It balances the whole entire system. And then to talk about the Vitruvian man, it's a man of the arts. It's a man of philosophy. It's a man of athletics. It's a man of being involved socially. Cultivating this within ourselves. And again, I don't want to just speak to men, but I feel like there's an opportunity, with the sports dialogue to talk that. And this goes for women as well. And I don't want to, segment that group of your audience, but cultivating this person that's well-rounded. And I think actually women often have that more often than men. They have a little bit of a 360 cultivation, because they're more in tune with their feminine side. They're more in tune, like you said, your girl brings you to a museum, right? Mm-hmm. So like, they're already in tune with that stuff. So as a men in our current culture, we need to begin to attune ourselves to these other ways of viewing the world, other ways of doing, other interests. Again, like, not to bring it back to sports, I think it's such an easy thing to pick on, but like, there's more to Sunday than obsessing. Exactly. And even if you want to take, I just always felt that I would still say I've learned that balance this year in 2021. We're more like, I'm focusing more on that, but I would say I was that obsessive westernized guy that wanted money and power, financial service firm, hedge fund. And, we could switch the sports to money, and you'll see that guys will sacrifice 80, 100 hours a week. They'll sacrifice their relationships with their friends, with their families, with their wives, all this stuff to make money. And everything you're saying, by the way, that's like my goal too, Vitruvian man. The whole point of this podcast is to bring that mind, body, and spirit. Shiva knows I went to the gym before. We banged out legs. I got like 25% douchiness in me. So we're doing abs today, baby. Abs today for me.
Exactly. Okay, good. But this whole idea of balance, I think, was kind of lied to us for the last 30 years of like, no, you got to go 100%, and like this hustle culture. I get it. You got to work hard, but you don't got to sacrifice. Like, I felt like I always felt like I had to go, you can't go 60, 70, 80% in 4 to 5 things. I just got to go 100% in one thing. And that's showing it to the top. And it's like, well, you don't realize what you lose when you get to the top of things, A, and B, life is more vibrant in color and just more, I don't know. There's just more, I don't know what the word is, like, gist to it when you're dabbling in these different things. So I'm going to talk to you after this. I'm talking to a philosopher, then I'm going to talk to a scientist, then I'm, then we'll go out with the boys. It's just like a nice different thing. And I think some people want to like the way the mind works, you just categorize people like you're this, you're that. And now Shiva, people I'm just confusing people left and right. It's like, oh, you're in the gym, but you're doing this, but I'll go out and get bottle service too. We do that. Like it's seeing whatever goes. And I used to think that was like confusing. Like, who am I? And now I'm realizing, oh, it's everything. That's the answer. It's like, you want to be everything.
Yeah. And that's actually, philosophy within Vedic philosophy is, the divine, the spirit isn't everything. And it's more of a downward, upward kind of realization versus monotheism is a downward, inward. We're a inward, outward. So realizing when you start inward that everything is actually, and we're even afraid to use the term in our generation. I think sometimes everything is God, everything is spirit. You begin to have a different relationship to things. And like you said, you begin to cultivate other aspects of the self that, we're maybe not being paid attention to. And you're like, oh, actually, when I talk to philosophers, when I talk to yogis, that actually informs the way I work out, or that actually informs the way I am at work. And it makes me a better athlete. It makes me a better partner. It makes me a better, coach, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think men probably think, it's just, you go up a social hierarchy on that one level, but what you're doing, like now I feel when I go to a meeting with everybody knows what I do. I deal with billionaires and it's all fun. But like, I see myself talking to these guys about the stuff I'm talking about with you when I would have thought like, oh, this is weird stuff. And it's like, oh, because now what happens is you walk into the meeting, it's like, do you have a podcast? And I was always like nervous to bring that side out because the suit, the business guy, now it's like, nah, motherfucker, we do it. We're talking about the mind, and it infiltrates everything in your life. Philosophically, spiritually, physically, metaphysically, everything.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing is when I actually, I took that trip out west with my family, right?
How old are you then at this point?
Oh man, I was probably 13 maybe.
Okay.
So like I was kind of like the older cousin, the older brother that was kind of, so like I was like the bridge in between the adults, but like I was having my kind of own experience, even within that trip. So then when I come back, I realize there's a lot more going on. And where was I going to go with that one? Oh no, I wanted to bring it back to the fact that a lot of these, and so then as I continue my spiritual path later on in life, I realized a lot of these high profile guys, these successful people, even a lot of their wives are into the crystals, they're into the spiritual side, they're into Reiki, they're into getting massages, they're into taking care of the body. And I think this is almost maybe not even talked about that much. I think, a lot of guys might be silently doing it, afraid to actually truly talk about it, afraid to actually be themselves, afraid to actually say like, oh no, you know what, this is good for me, this is why I do it. And I think that's changing especially within the last 4 or 5 years I've noticed. And especially too, I actually went through a serious burnout end of last year. And, even for, a hippie yogi type guy who, I work a full-time job. I work as a creative director for, Google, Microsoft, Apple, all these companies. I've done work for them. But man, I got burnt out at the end of last year with all my yoga side hustles, all my art side hustles. And I crashed hard. And I thank God I had my practices to fall back on. So I want to encourage people, work hard, but also balance that other side of life with cultivating all these other things we're talking about: the spirit, the body, the mind.
How was it growing up because I'm Sam, I only went to private Catholic school my whole life. How was it navigating through that process as a young adult? Because it never felt right to me. We just were born with guilt, and you're born with original sin, and you owe something to this other God. And in the Eastern philosophies, it's totally different. You are God in the way. You are the God itself. How was that navigating through that? And how did what did that look like?
Yeah. So, when I was living in Cleveland, we're not trying to shit on Cleveland here, but we're just talking what it was. I always had a deep sense and connection to spirit. I love the stories in the Bible. I love this concept of Jesus. I just didn't like some of the things that came along with it, like shame, guilt, these things, right? And I just thought it was very strange that you're born with all these, things they put on you, and it's like, man, I'm just trying my best. I didn't ask for any of this, right? So as I began to study other things, I realized you can actually have your own kind of personal spirituality, which is, separate from a major religion. And, a lot of people ask me if I'm Hindu, and I wouldn't even say I'm Hindu, honestly. I would say like I'm a Vedic yogi, because actually it's a lifestyle, it's a way of life, it's a way of being. And actually, if we really take a step back, that's actually what all these spiritual teachers are teaching in the first place. They're not teaching a religion, they're teaching a way of being. So if we actually strip the isms, the thisms from everything, you know, there's a way of being that all these guys, all these women were talking about, right? Because there's sages and saints all through time. And you know, you asked the question about how was that transitioning. Well, you know, there was definitely an awkward period with my family, and there still is sometimes. But at the end of the day, this is my life's journey, and you have to take control of your life, because we're all going to die, right? And I think this is something we're both interested in talking about, which is death. And actually, death is actually guiding a lot of our decisions in our everyday life. We're just not aware of it. And this fear of death that we just don't talk about in society is kind of permeating through all our decisions and through all our fears and excitements. And you know, that's why we become addicted, because we want to get all these experiences in before we're gone. And the more we talk about death, the more we acknowledge it, the more we prepare for it. And that's actually also what yoga does, is to help you prepare for death, to have a good death. You know, you might have heard these words on, like, you know, some sort of medieval show or things like I want a good death, things like that. But that's not very far off from how I want to die, right? One of my teachers always used to joke with us. He said, you don't want to be laying on your back in a nursing home with 2.5 men on the TV. That's not how you want to die, right? And actually, I had a flashback to actually being in hospice with my grandmother that was experiencing that very thing. And it was just like this pull back of the curtain, as we say in kind of these spiritual circles. The curtain is removed. You're seeing another layer of reality, and you're like, oh my God, that's not what I want. You know, I want to be meditating, some good music on, some candles, you know, like thinking about these things, because this is the biggest transition of all. And what I've learned through studying, you know, my studies in the Vedas and in Buddhism, is that, you know, we're all here, of course, temporarily, and we want to prepare ourselves to transition well. So that's what a lot of these practices do.
That is beautiful. And when did this start? When did you start kind of contemplating death more? Because I think there's something interesting that happens to your mind when you get close to it, and you hear this when near-death experiences, that something kind of turns on. And I haven't spoken about what happened yet. People, you're going to see this episode come out with Shiva on Monday, but I got jumped this weekend. Shiva, it's crazy, yeah. So you can see it here. We had some stitches, whatever. I figured it out. I got a plastic surgeon, and like, yeah, I got lucky. But if you told me I was jumped by 3 African Americans and blindsided, I would have been like in bad shape. I would have been, A, I feel grateful, but B, I feel like not that I stood it in the face, because I got hit. They said, run your shit. And I was like, that's not going to happen. For people who are listening, don't do what I do. Just give up your shit. I run a different ship, Shiva, because I'm going to die on my shield. That's just how it goes down. And there was something about this experience that I would say I was in a rut before. And by going through it, not that they had weapons or anything, I was close to it, but just by going through it, I feel a lot, I don't know, better or more confident, or just more like I'm more resourceful and resilient than I thought. I don't know. It's a very small, minor thing, but it's very interesting how people could look at chaos and kind of, you know, something. I'm looking like it's a good thing. I think I'm kind of used to bad shit happening, so maybe that's why. But that was just that was my weekend. That's never happened before, so don't think I'm out here starting shit. But it's just New York is crazy.
It's crazy. No, I mean, yeah, the world, and that's the other thing we're talking about earlier, is like being athletic, being fit to be prepared for these altercations, but at the same time, cultivating a mindset to prepare for situations that we just had no clue were going to happen. So in this instance, did you know, they asked for your money, they asked you put up a fight, or what happened?
So what happened was and everybody, I may do an episode on this. I may have somebody come on, we'll talk about it. But like, I was on my phone waiting for the Uber after dinner, Moxie Hotel, beautiful stuff. Nowhere, boom, I get jabbed up. So I stumble, whatever. 3 black dudes, and they're like, run your shit. I was like, it's not going to happen. So we started tussling a little bit. I'm not a fighter, Shiva. I can't really throw. I just knew, like, get one off me. So I pushed one. The other 2 started tussling. By that point, people intervened. Thank God. Shout out to security. So it wasn't that crazy. Maybe it was like a 90-second situation. But I think
no weapons. They didn't ask for money or anything.
Yeah, they said run your shit, which means like,
I don't even know what that means.
No, you're good. They were like, give us all the shit. I'm wearing nicer things. I have about 2 nice diamond necklaces. I have, and I'm like, it's just not going to happen. I was just ready, not that I care about that. It was more like, I'm not going to let malevolence and evil stand in my city, or at least I'll try to put up a fight. So the second I said that, something switched in their eyes of, well, this wasn't the way we expected it to go. And apparently they did this 4 to 5 times to tourists, because that's more of a tourist spot, the Moxie Hotel, and everybody's just giving up their shit. And again, people, don't do what I do. I'm just an idiot and I can't help myself. But there was just something that changed me since that. I feel great this week. It's weird. A little black eye, some stitches, and I'm good, Shiva. I can't really understand. And I think this comes back to the death piece of, we're always having this kind of dualistic fight with the physical self and the symbolic self. And the way, what I believe, and you could tell me what your thoughts are, is why yoga transcends that symbolic self. That's really all we care about. It's transcending the symbolic self. What is your opinion on that?
It's really interesting, because I was listening to your story and I'm like, man, I don't think I would have, like, I'm also a person who likes to stand my ground. At the same time, I know odds, and I know, here's my take on it. There's also like a Taoist philosophy of like bending and being water. Bruce Lee talks about this, right? So, water can crash or it can take form, right? So when you get hit, you can take form, right? Like you can take the form of how that hit's coming in and reduce it, right? Or, you can come at it and crash against it. So in this instance, crashing worked for you. It caught the opponent off guard, right? But I was thinking, well, I know time is short, life is short. If I was by myself, I probably would have just been, here you go, right? But I probably also wouldn't have had a diamond necklace, because and again, we're different men and different upbringings and different life experiences. I'm wondering, it's always good for me to actually hear these stories as a practicing yoga, because I've gotten a few altercations. Actually, I'll tell you a story. I was actually traveling in, because I wasn't trying to tell you how I would have do it. I was just, listen to your story. I was
listen, dude, I am not, I've learned, like, my altercation, I'm not a fighter or anything.
Yeah.
And trust me, learn my lessons here, because it's like the first time out with a freaking thing. I'm an idiot. But I knew I was near, like, this is the scary part. I was like 50, 60 feet away from a big hotel with people out front. So I was just trying to make noise. I was like, no way I'm taking this down. I was like, I needed to make some noise to just get some people over. Cause like security was right. These guys just didn't, that's what scares me. It's like when it's scary. But what was your altercation?
Well, I always look at these it's kind of like these butterfly moments, right? You're pushed through this vortex and you come out the other side. You said you're looking at life a little bit differently. You're approaching things differently, right? And my question would be, if that happens again, how will you react differently? These are questions I would ask myself, like, how can, and that's what, deep introspection does, is like, okay, I handled it this way this time. Okay, what if it goes a different way next time? How can I be prepared? Or how can I put my mind through these mental paces without going too crazy? But what happened to me was, I met up with my family in Costa Rica for vacation. We stayed at a great house on a mountain overlooking the beach. Did the vacation with the family. I was like, I'm gonna stay a few days in the capital before I fly out. Stayed like 2 days. I just wanted to get a sense, take some time. And I did. Literally the day I'm leaving, I go get some food. It's a great experience. I go to the park, and then this guy just starts with me. And he's homeless. He speaks, both languages. I think he was actually from America, actually, and just had been living down there for like most of his life. And he just decided that I was the guy he was going to mess with that day. And normally, he said something that triggered a little fear in me. And then he sensed it, right? He sensed it. Right? These people are like, they're like animals with this stuff that want to elicit more fear, more confrontation out of you. There's a difference between being blindsided inside the head.
What did he say, Shiva, if you don't mind me asking?
I honestly can't even remember at this point.
Okay.
And it just kept rolling. He asked me for money. I was like, no, I literally had like $3, $4, $5 to take a cab to the airport. And because I like manage my budget perfectly that trip, right? And I had the exact money I needed to get to the airport. And he's like, I know you have money. I was like, well, yeah, but I can't get the money to you. And he's like, so he got upset that I lied to him in the beginning, that I said I didn't have money. I was like, well, man, you can be upset with me. I was like, I'm gonna wish you a good day. I'm gonna keep going. So I just left the situation. Guy just follows me across this is a giant park. He just follows me across the whole park. Anyways, long story short, I'm about to drop this guy. I'm pretty sure I could take him. Not sure if he has a knife. And something comes to me. One of my teachers, who's in the afterlife. I actually never met him in the body. I had a relationship with the teacher out of the body through reading his books. And this is actually what some of the sadhus and teachers of India will tell you, is that you can actually create a lot of people do this with Jesus, right? In the West here, you can cultivate a really great relationship with the teacher, even though you've never met them. So my master, Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, comes to me. He says, is there another way to resolve this altercation? And I said, damn it, you're right. And I said to the guy, I said, hey man, I teach meditation. I think we're both upset. How about if you meditate with me? I'll give you a couple bucks. And he's like, it just caught him by surprise. So we sat down and we meditated in the park for only a few minutes. Cause like I was trying to do at least 10-minute meditation. It's nothing for me these days. And that's not to brag. It's just like, I do at least 10 minutes every day. And maybe 2 minutes in, 3 minutes in, he goes, thank you. I was like, you want that $1 or whatever? He's like, no, man, keep it. Thank you. And just walked away. And like to that day, that sort of thing is always in the back of my mind. Now, of course, it's different if someone just walks up to me and clocks me in the face. I would be like, hey, I don't wear jewelry. I'll be like, here, take my mala. Yeah. But that's the same thing though. It's like, what gift can I give you that is beyond the material? Essentially, I think is the lesson there. Yeah.
No, dude, that's a beautiful story. And I was telling my sister's a detective in the NYPD. She's always trying to. I said, these guys would have just came up and asked for money. Probably would have just got money. It's something I didn't. I was you're so emotional after you get hit. I kind of just it worked in this situation, thank God. But that wasn't me. Like I kind of lost my shit because I was like, you have to fucking kill me, whatever, all this silly stuff. But your way is right. Yeah, I lost my shit. It was my sister saw the video. She's like, you lost your fucking mind, huh? I was like, yeah.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If you were, we're not having this conversation if they actually kill you. So like thinking about it like that, like, was it worth it? Was it worth it to be, alpha male in that instance? Was it worth it to okay. Right. So like if it happens again, are you just gonna be like, here's a diamond necklace? Or are you even gonna wear the diamond necklace out? Because it sounds like you're the type of guy that's like, I'm still gonna wear this because I don't want to live in fear. And that's also an important concept.
Well, I think there's one way to live in, like, don't live in fear, where you could stand your ground to a way, but like in reality, if I wasn't in that mindset, like if 3 dudes came up to me, it was just a very weird thing. If 3 dudes are walking up the alley, if I'm by myself, I'm giving up everything. I can't fight. I literally, it's more, that was just such a weird situation that, like some of the altercations I've had in New York have kind of ended that. I would not similar where they're meditating to you, but like, cut off somebody when these tough guys come out of the car. And I'm like, dude, are you okay? Like, what's going on here? Like, are you fine? That seems like a little bit of an overreaction. That's usually how I react to things. Like, let's just talk about it. Like, I know I was wrong. I cut you off. Definitely. Do you want to fight me now? Like, I'm not scared to get hit, but I just don't want to fight. Like, I'm not a fighter. So in that case, I think it was just more fight or flight mode. When usually I'm more I'll just like, let's talk this through, or give you. It's just no, but that's really
it took me a long time to get there. It took me
that was a long time. You mentioned that Yogananda. You were talking to the founder of the Kriya Yoga. Is that
Kriya Yoga? That's right.
Oh man,
self-realization fellowship.
Yes, beautiful.
And what's beautiful about that practice is, so the first time I went to one of those temples, like I had gotten a little. They make these the organization Self-Realization Fellowship, SRF. They make these little books, and they're just like little deep dives into like an aspect of his teaching. And I got one, then I got another one, then I had like 4 or 5 of this one. I was like, okay, maybe it's time to go to the temple. When I went to the temple, they literally have Jesus and Krishna at the altar. And that like blew my mind, because I was like, well, wait a second here. I thought I had to be one or the other. And it's like, but that's the whole message of his teaching, is that this is in fact all one. And then you'll also see his other yoga teachers up on the altar as well, because in India, yoga and the Vedas, there is a lineage, and the teachings are passed on to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. So we have Jesus, we have Krishna, we have all the yoga teachers on the altar, and it's like, wait, what? This destroys. You talk about death, right? And death doesn't always have to be dying and transitioning to the next realm. Death can be a way of a mindset, right? I've had to die many times in my mind at my concepts that I thought were so structured, so this is how it is, with my construct of reality, had to die. I literally had to connect, and it's essentially, new neural networks are being created in your brain for new opportunity, for creativity, for ways of seeing the world, and being confronted with an Eastern and a Western religion on the same altar was like the best thing that happened to me. It actually excited me. It actually validated the way I had secretly been feeling about spirituality my whole life. And sometimes you just need to, be snapped out of it with a visual. I'm an artist, a visual person, right? Just seeing that, there's reading about it, but then there's, having a direct experience. This is also something we talk about within the yoga lineages, is having a direct experience of the divine is probably the best thing that can happen to you, because then no one can take that away from you. No amount of science, no amount of this, that, or the other thing can take away the direct experience I've had of my own divinity and connection to source. And that's the most beautiful thing. And that's what I try to help cultivate in other people.
Man, that's good, dude. That's good. And as far as like, I was trying to think of that question I asked to lead all this before I got into my story. Yeah. The question of how you are you're confronting fear and liberating yourself from death through yoga. Mm-hmm. How would you put that into words, or is there even something you could even put into words? I know that's part of this issue is when you're trying to talk about stuff, you just can't. Some of it just can't. Yeah. Doesn't come out the right way.
Yeah, I think even the way you said it's quite elegant. That's a lot to unpack, though. But essentially, the 8 limbs of yoga that have been kind of organized in these last couple hundred years present themselves in a way that is a kind of like a way of living life. But much like, and there are similarities. I'm actually maybe going to write a piece about this or incorporate this in some of my teaching. There are similarities between like the 10 Commandments and the yamas and niyamas, right? So like the yamas are restraints. The niyamas are observances. So restraints of how to act in the world. So this is talking about non-harming, telling the truth, not stealing, being non-attached to things. So these are outward observances. And then you have the niyamas, which are the inward observances. This is being cleanly, contentment, excitement for life, self-study, and then also surrender. So like there are parallels between the East and the West. We're just saying everything in a different way. But what I've liked about yoga, and this is trying to answer your question, is the system keeps going beyond that. And it talks about, and that's actually where the most popular aspect of yoga here in the West, which is asanas, that's the 3rd limb. These are the postures of yoga, right? And this is the athleticism of yoga that, everyone wants a hot yoga body. Yoga is so popular, especially in LA, the West Coast, and it's really popular in some niches in New York, and it's growing and growing on the East Coast specifically. But it's this physical posture. I never really read how to work out in the Bible, right? Like, and it's not to shame on the Bible. It's just like, oh, there's this whole other way of spiritually living your life that includes staying fit, and then it goes beyond that too as well. So then we get to pranayama, and that includes the breath. That includes how to breathe, right? So like, for example, you seem to have a pretty good handle on control of your breath, because there's a few stories you've told about guys getting out of the car and wanting to go with you, and you're like, hey, let's just take a breath here. And there's a reason this expression exists, like take a deep breath, like, right? And I'm even getting excited to talk about this. I can just regulate myself real quick, come back to my baseline, right? But like, there are literal pages and documents of different techniques and different ways of doing this breathing, of these breathing techniques that can help you live a balanced life. And this is one I like to give to everyone real quick. So if you're feeling upset, if you're feeling worked up, you're angry at your spouse, you're angry at your kids or whatever, it's anger. I use that example for me because I have anger, right? That's the number one issue. My anger, my short temper, and my impatience. These are the things I work on. So yeah, right? I'm sure as a New York guy, you can probably relate.
Yep.
So real easy. double inhale, double exhale. So double inhale through the nose, double exhale through the mouth. You can do this about 6 to a dozen times. I can even feel it right now. I'm standing up. It just shifts your body. It shifts you out of, because what happens with your breathing is there's a specific scientific term, but it is a thing that just happens without you having any control over it, right? Just like your eyes see, unless your eyelids are closed, your mouth is, your lungs are breathing in air. And it's in your normal breathing pattern. So if you do something to disrupt your normal breathing pattern by double inhaling, maybe even holding at the top, so, and then even being empty at the end, and just observing what it is to be empty. You know, these small practices, it sounds strange, helps with preparing for death. Just like posing the body keeps you healthy, so you can not be too crippled or depleted when your body's transitioning. Like, yes, we're all going to become frail, but you know, you can live a healthier, longer life up until that point of death. You can be in control of your breathing when that moment of transition comes, right? But the benefit actually is we get to actually use it in our daily life. So it's a large roundabout way of answering the question, but like the thing is, with these practices, it's not like a direct, immediate thing. This is why we call it practice. This is why there's no yoga competitions, although I'm sure America will do something. I'm like dreading the day that happens, that we turn yoga. I mean, it's already turning into a competition in a lot of yoga studios. There's a lot of teachers that, can be very strict, and there's even different schools within yoga that are very strict and very conforming and very, and I think that's a little problematic, because the whole idea is to develop a practice. And this is something
your own
that
practice.
Your own practice, something that you do, something that becomes familiar to you, something that you like. And I think the beauty of it too is, like, you got into asana, you got into the movement practice, but just knowing that there are, more practices to incorporate is exciting for me. I always like to nerd out. You got Dungeons and Dragons shirt on. Like, I love sci-fi, I love all that stuff, and I like to nerd out about these little worlds. So that's kind of how it happened for me. I was like, oh, this helped me. Okay, what about this aspect? Okay, wow. Yeah. And then there's like, hundreds of ways of breathing, hundreds of modalities that you can work into your body, and some are easier than others. And actually, one last thing, and I'll move on from breath, but I'm looking at back at my yoga mat, but every morning I do what I have is called sadhana. And this is a Sanskrit word, and I'm probably going to butcher the meaning right now because I haven't looked at it in a while, but essentially it's like the best way I can describe it is like the practice of connecting to the divine, essentially. And it's like the tools that help you connect, right? So for me, it's like I usually wake up, I do a HIIT workout. I've been big into HIIT workouts the last couple of years. I like to move my body. I like to be in control of my body. That's one thing yoga has taught me, because I used to be, bigger and, jacked. But what yoga taught me is, like, I was actually reducing my range of motion in my body by having muscles. When I couldn't get my elbows to touch, I was like, and that was for a very long period of time. And I realized I didn't have that range of motion, to even like maybe go like this. I was like, well, that doesn't seem optimal, right? Because like if I was surviving, if I was living off the land, if I was climbing a cliff face, I would need to probably be the build of a soccer player, or like a martial artist, right? Kind of that's kind of where my body type is now.
Sure.
And where I was going with that. So that's going back to my morning routine, my sadhana, and that's HIIT workout. So what I like about that is it's we use a little bit of weight, but it's pretty minimal, and we're moving the body in different ways. We're doing range of motion workouts. We're incorporating, a lot of the body, using the floor, using our own body weight. So I like to start with that. And again, this is going to be different for everyone. Find what works for you. I'd like to offer up what I've found for like 2 decades of self-study. And then I like to roll that into like asana. And that's the movement practice of yoga. So that's posing. And, I've done yoga teacher trainings, things like this. I've been practicing for over a decade. So I can go through a quick yoga flow in 20 minutes. And that's the thing too. Like, people don't realize, like, it doesn't always need to be an hour or a half-hour yoga class. Like, if you could commit to doing yoga twice a week, 3 times a week for 20 minutes, like that is just as much as going to one yoga class a week, but then you'll get the benefits the longer in the week by doing it every day, right? So this is kind of how I look at it. It's like you can kind of nerd out and maximize it, right? You can use your analytical mind to figure out the best way to balance it for yourself.
Yeah, that's the best part of all these things. It's like you kind of get it to do it. Like I learned from asking the Shivas. I was asked like, "What's your meditation practice?" And everyone was like, "Can't talk about that because it's your practice." That's why I don't even ask you what kind of meditation.
Oh, well, we can talk about it. Yeah,
bro, please. But
we're gonna get there. So that's only half the morning practice.
Yeah, dude, that's what I'm talking about. As I start off with the pranayama breath work, which I'm going to take that and add that to my technique because I really like that little that double breath in. And I would say that's probably I was doing basic, in through single nostrils, out through both, just to kind of calm down my parasympathetic nervous system. Then moving to because I was not familiar with the 8 limbs, and I was Googling it. I'm like, oh, so I do pranayama. That's one. And then I jumped.
A lot of us do it already. Yep.
Yeah, and then I jumped to I believe it was Dharana, which is the focus concentration, which is I do like a focus meditation for a little bit, and then I work out, do all that stuff, and then and then move to before I start work, I just like doing, like you said, 20 to 30 minutes every day of yoga. But it's been hard because like, how would you, it's just hard because there's so many different styles. And like, where would you suggest somebody starts? Like because even if they're overwhelmed, like where should I start? What's a basic technique of the ancient studies and of where we should start with yoga?
Well, actually you mentioned a few interesting things there. You said, I do something, real simple, easy. But actually, the longer you practice, like what I've discovered is like the longer you practice, it's actually these simple beginner techniques are often the best. Right. So like I've been coming back to a lot of beginner techniques in my practices and realizing it's not about this fluffy stuff, or it's not about all these extravagant things, right? The more you reduce down, the better it is. And this is almost like a minimalistic approach to life too. But your question was, where do you start?
Yeah, if somebody's just looking to dabble, because like, listen, I went off of YouTube. I'm typing in YouTube. I've dabbled in yin yoga because for me, holding the postures are helpful. But then even with YouTube, like Kriya Yoga, that's not real Kriya Yoga. I'm like, yo, who's this girl, Mary Beth Casa, teaching me about this shit,
Well, also too, like never. This is an interesting thing because there's a lot of charlatans out there. There's a lot of really great teachers out there. And a lot of times what happens is people get popular because they taught asana and they teach asana well, which is the movement, right? But maybe they don't disseminate the pranayama or the deeper wisdoms or the meditations as well, right? So like you have to figure out, and this is kind of where you can kind of cherry pick, like, maybe you get your asana from this person. Maybe you get your breath work from this person. Maybe you get your meditation from this person. And I wouldn't say like go to one thing for everything, right? That's not how I look at it, because actually my practice is, studying hundreds of different approaches to all of this and kind of finding what works best for me. And actually one of the things I'm working on is, in my partner, she's, if I have a baseline knowledge that I can explain it well, she is like the Sanskrit scholar. She knows, she corrects my pronunciation of words. She knows the stories inside and out on a deeper level. And we actually balance each other really nice. But I'm actually trying to work on a document that actually will break down all the lineages. Cause I was like, because I come from a graphic design background, and I'm like, I need like an infographic of all these lineages explained and how they branch off from one another. And that's something that's another project we talked about that's on the back burner for now, but that's something I'm working on. So like when people come to this stuff, they're not overwhelmed, because it can be very overwhelming. And not to overwhelm people right now, but I do want to talk about the other two parts of my morning practice, which is, so I do my HIIT workout, then I do my asana practice, which is movement. Then I get to my pranayama. And I do, you can try this one too. I found, again, the most simple things are actually the best. And what I do is I lay on my back. I take an inhale, actually through my mouth. Let me do that again. And then you can breathe into your shoulders, you can breathe into your chest, or you can breathe into your stomach. And you can alternate what you do on each day. But stick with it for these 30 breaths. You're going to take 30 in, 30 out, real easy, not forced. So just count to 30, keep track on your hands, whatever it is. Then when you get to the last one, take a deep breath in, and you're actually going to hold your breath for as long as you can. And you might be surprised, maybe you can only hold your breath for 30 seconds, maybe it's a minute, work your way up. I'm at like 3 minutes right now on a good day. So I hold my breath, and sometimes in a hurry, so I only hold for 1 minute. So that's the sequence. So you do 30 in and out, hold as long as you can. And we're not trying to pass ourselves out either. Like, let's be serious. We're not trying to, it's not a competition. Hold your breath as long as you can, but no one's watching, right? So you're gonna do that 3 times. So that sequence 3 times. By the end, you're gonna be blissed out. You're gonna be like, why the hell was I so angry about this issue I have? Or why am I only looking at this situation like this? There's a myriad of ways of doing it, right? You're gonna feel lighter. And then actually what happens is you can roll that right into meditation. And actually, if you look at the sequencing of the 8 limbs, this is how they more or less work, right? You do a movement practice, you do a breath practice, and then you're prepared for meditation. And actually the last 4 limbs of yoga are actually all about meditation, right? It's all about withdrawing the senses. It's about concentrating. And then it's after we're concentrating, it's about letting go of that concentration. And then if we do all of that, we can have a blissful divine experience.
Samadhi.
Yeah. Right? Yes, exactly. So that's kind of the biggest takeaway for me is, I think a lot of us have come across these different teachings, and it sounds like you're already doing a lot of them, right? But what my message is to people is actually sequence those things. You'll actually be able to get to these deeper states.
So you're saying I should put the flow first, do the posturing first, and then breath work, and then into the meditation.
Yeah, but that's how it was designed. That doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Yeah, no, but it kind of makes sense. It kind of
try.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually what I think. This is my message for guys too. Is like the way I got actually into meditation was like I used to run on the beach when I lived in California. I'd do these beach workouts, and then I'd go for a couple mile run, and then I'd be ready to meditate. I had to like break myself down mentally, physically, to like remove everything so that I could sit. So that's kind of why I got used to working out then meditating, and I think it's actually a good technique to give a try.
No, that makes for me. It always felt weird because I was just used to always meditate. Like I like to wake up 4:30 a.m. and then start the meditation. But for me, it's always weird doing like you do your mind work, then you're going to the gym, you got to do all the douchey stuff, and then going back to yoga. So just starting yoga in the front. I think that sounds good physically, and if that's what the ancient texts say, I'm doing that. But if somebody's looking to if I wanted to find asanas, like the classic correct asanas, not from whoever has the most views on YouTube, where would you suggest? Is there just basic 6 or 7 or 8 poses? Like how would you break that down?
It's a really good question. I think, Hatha yoga with the H, Hatha.
Hatha yoga?
Probably Hatha, yeah. H with the H, H-A-T-H-A.
Yep.
I think probably has really good, strong sequencing. But sometimes they can be a little strict. And then there's even different schools within Hatha yoga, or Hatha yoga. But they'll have guides of how to posture the butt. They have that down. What I like is vinyasa flow. And vinyasa flow is kind of not as strict as and this is my interpretation of, and I've had different teachers, in LA, I've had different teachers on the East Coast. I've seen some teachers on the East Coast that go really fast, and I like a little bit of a slower pace. Like you can get a whole workout, but you can take our time. You actually make it a dance, right? And this is actually another thing important to talk about is like all the ancient teachers will tell you, like, if you can't dance, if you're afraid to dance, you're nowhere close to enlightenment. So like make things a dance in your life. And actually that's why I like this style of vinyasa flow, is because it's like this graceful elegance that you can incorporate in your practice, right? And it's almost like a ballet in a way, like an athletic, strong ballet, right? And if you want to make fun of dancers, well, have you ever seen a dancer's body? They're some of the most fit, agile in their body, and control their body people in the world. So I would say start with vinyasa. That's my personal favorite, but I like a lot of movement. There's so many styles, and this is actually why I want to make this chart so we can break this down for everyone. Because then if you're female, you might need a rest, especially this is important for guys to know about, but when your woman's on her moon or when she's bleeding, it's important to make sure you're not pressuring her to achieve at the level you're achieving, because you're actually living on a 24-hour cycle. She's living on a 24-day cycle, right? So our hormones as men are fluctuating on a whole 24-hour cycle. They're going on a month, right? Because they release an egg, and it's a whole different process. So the more you can become aware of that, the more you can actually be in alignment with your partner.
That is a really cool little piece. I've never heard anybody say that before.
Yeah. I didn't make it up. I just, observed this with being in relationships with women, studying these teachings. And this is the other thing too, is like, as you cultivate these other sides, this kind of brings it back to where we're in the beginning of the conversation, is you cultivate these feminine aspects, you actually you bring your body into more balance, right? You're not this over, angry, hyper masculine thing, but you're also not this soft, feminine, delicate thing. You're somewhere in the middle, and you can actually fluctuate, right? And that's kind of how I see myself these days, right? Like I can go into my art side, or I can go in my athletic side when I go to boxing, right? So again, cultivating all this, and then even, a lot of us want to be in relationships, or we're looking for a relationship, just being mindful of these things in the, if we're a straight person, being understanding what's going on in the opposite sex can help you have a better relationship too.
Absolutely. Yeah. In my 20s, I was trying to do the whole power money thing. And like, listen, you get girls you get the ones, the not the best ones. And you start talking about what just feels right and authentic. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow. Like it's, it's just, you open up a little more. Cause that was always, I would say, my issue, New York guys and all this stuff. It's really like the more you grasp onto that masculinity, the more you it falls away. Like you're grasping onto sand.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah. And at the end of the day, bring it back to death. Like you are grasping onto sand. You're grasping onto this construct you've built of yourself in your mind. And, I hate to break it to everyone, but, we're going to die. And all these delusions of reality we thought, and all these things we thought about ourselves, about others, will literally fade away as we blend back into whatever's next, and that's the great thing about yoga. It gives you a new relationship to it, prepares you for it. And I think you asked the question of how does yoga prepare you for that? It's like these small things you don't even realize are happening over time. You keep doing your practices, you keep waking up doing yoga, keep meditating, keep doing breath work, and these small changes keep occurring over time. And before you realize it, I like to say that you have a direct experience, that you have these epiphanies, right? That's what an epiphany is. It's like this change of view, and you change your relationship to it. And that's actually a mini death right there. So you're having that mini death to your relationship to yourself. Like self-love was a thing I had to work on, right? You change your relationship to, friends, family, but most importantly, you change it to yourself. When you actually begin to treat yourself with love, kindness, and respect, like that's where you have to start. You can't just expect to go be a good person in the world if you're not actually treating yourself with love, yourself with kindness. So like, that's what these practices help cultivate. This word of mindfulness, like that's like the first two limbs of yoga is these outward and inward practices of mindfulness, right? And that's where it all starts.
Shiva, I'm gonna end it there because that was you just crushed it for the last 10 minutes, man. That was beautiful, dude. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm gonna put all the information below on Shiva's music, on the mudras. I know you've been working on something with that.
Working on a book, yep.
Yeah, a little bit of everything, but please reach out to him, reach out to me if you guys want to connect, anything. That's it, Shiva. Anything else coming up you want to talk about?
Right now, just working on, we've got a couple of retreats coming up for next year. So if you do want to cultivate a stronger yoga practice, or maybe you're a beginner, maybe you've been doing it for a few years and you're interested in this word I talked about, sadhana, cultivating a really strong practice on a daily basis, or every other day basis. That's what my retreats focus on, is cultivating this really strong foundation, because once you have that foundation, life begins to blossom in a new way, and you can grow and expand from there. So we're doing probably at least 4 retreats next year, probably one in the States, Mexico, probably Bali, and then maybe Greece. So all my links, he'll share them here. You can sign up for the retreat information. We'll probably be announcing a lot of those in the next coming weeks.
The Bali one sounds good to me. So hopefully I'll see you there.
Come on, man.
Let's do it. Everybody, thank you guys so much. All the support. If you're on the new YouTube channel, you know what to do. Click that subscribe button. Listening for over 2 years now, we've been doing this. Thank you guys so much for the support. All that good stuff. As always, stay safe, stay positive, stay blessed. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Namaste.